That's all I needed. Thank you very much. Good morning, everybody. And I think we're entering a very cool phase for all of us. And sometimes it's cool and sometimes not the greatest for student loans and the entire student loan policy. And it seems like it is changing dramatically. I'd like you to stop me and ask questions at any time. This is an update to the last 4 webinars we have done. And we just returned from a conference in Kansas City, Missouri for career technical education schools. And we had a couple of former Hill staff attend. So I'll start going through what we've learned and where we are. And I think we are 3 days away from a Supreme Court decision. As in all Washington habits, they will probably release their decision at 4:45 p.m. Eastern and get in their limousines and leave the office for the weekend. They might do it on Thursday evening. So Ion Tuition is a tech company, tech forward with a human touch, and we work for you. We don't charge students. We work only for colleges and universities. You hire Ion to help your students with a return to repayment cohort default rate management company, and it's like the Ohio State University. We take pride in the work we do. What's next? So we'll go through and I'll try to give you the whole update in 35 or less minutes. And please don't hesitate to stop me at any time, either by chat or by just asking the question. I'm happy to go through all of it and cover any questions you might have in between. Mr. Donrovich, I saw you just put yourself on camera. Appreciate it. Now we got a few. Makes me very happy. Not that it means anything, but it makes me happy. So we'll go through the SCOTUS decision and outcomes, education, and the updates from the servicers. We'll go through delinquency and default rate projections, I think, which is important to us, not just in the next year, but in the next 4 years, and what we call the playbook for return to repayment. A quick background on Ion Tuition, we'll send it to you, but the biggest numbers, we like big numbers because student loans are big numbers. If you're going to help that many billions of dollars get back into repayment, we've had 37 million on the phone helping borrowers in the last 10 years. We've had 4.7 million students in service, and we continue to do the same work. And we were all old people. We've had the people showing up here, Mr. Kolakowski, Mr. Givens, who's the head of Ion Tuition, Mr. Reinwald. They've all been together. Just all of us combined is, I think, 75 years of higher ed experience. We're there from the beginning to the end, enrollment management, all the way to teletherapy. And a lot of the work gets done from the time the student enters your school and you plan for the student to helping them while they're in school, and then helping out you with regulatory, any regulatory data collection and oversight assistance. So first question, maybe a show of hands, maybe not. Have you seen a press release from the department in the last 10 days? I know the answer to that is no, so I won't ask questions like the IG does because I know the answer. Have you received any information? You probably haven't received any information, but I can tell you, Mr. Givens' daughter's loan was transferred from Great Lakes to Nelnet, and she got that communication, Brent, what was it, 6 months ago, 8 months ago?
Yeah, the beginning stages of that was when they started. The most recent and last communication was on April 27th. And it states that Nelnet will be contacting her sometime after May 16th, or actually on the 16th of May. However, she hasn't received any notifications or any communication from Nelnet. So she's kind of, luckily she has me as her dad, but if she didn't, she'd be in a black hole somewhere, not really knowing what to do.
And this is what my son received. And once again, I've told him, you pay, you play, you pay. And he hasn't made a payment in the last 3.5 years. He got this letter from Nelnet. Here's what the key lines are. It's a perfect time to take advantage of our online resources while the COVID-19 payment pause continues. They don't even have enough information to say, you may have to start repayment on September 1st, because that's what the administration has said. Whether or not forgiveness gets a positive ruling from the Supreme Court, repayment still starts 60 days from that day. And there's the italics and emphasis. I didn't add it. No payments are required until the pause ends. Why would you tell students not to pay? And we'll come back to that. Perhaps you're new to managing your student loans. Recently had your loans transferred to Nelnet. Register now. And we know that they're not able to take payments on those whose loans have been transferred. That is a fact. If your loans have been transferred from, let's say, Navient to Nelnet, you cannot make payments on those loans, even if you want to send payments while the interest is not accruing. So that's the state of where we are, and the department hasn't said a word, and they're not talking to servicers. So we look at this as chaos theory, and that it's effective right this minute. 33 million into repayment, 25 million will not have phone numbers. The reason we say that, phone numbers or email addresses, because the Census Bureau clearly says that a student relocates 3 times in the first year after completing a school. Adult learners might be different, but most of these students are your traditional students. Non-traditional students have a different issue to deal with. An additional 2 million students enter repayment in the next year, and the servicers aren't going to pay any attention to your cohorts, the new cohorts, because they'll get to them as they become more delinquent. But we also know, and Visa and MasterCard and all of these guys have proven with clear scientific data, that a person who does not make their de minimis first payment is 85% more likely to become delinquent and default on their loans. This is credit cards, which you have to pay. Just imagine what happens with student loans. It's the last one you pay, right? You don't pay attention to your student loans. That's the last one you need to pay. Just the nature of how things work. What are they saying? Confident about legal standing on loan forgiveness. That's James Quall. Cordray says unprecedented task of entering millions into repayment. And Cardona says he's very confident they're going to provide a ramp up. What is that ramp up? That ramp up is multiple months of a safety net. So even if you don't make a payment in the first 6 months and you can go delinquent in month 5, they'll tell you you're current, just start your payments from month 6. They could go all the way up to 12 months. Here's the only problem. Now the number of months or years that the person has gone without paying their loans back is 5 years almost, 4.5 years. So their payment behaviors after that are going to be even worse. So the policy itself has some very dramatically negative consequences. What do student borrowers need to know? I just want to make sure that we cover what our role is, not just ION, but all of us put together. We're going to have a real problem. For example, if colleges say, hey, ION tuition, we need to service another 600,000 student loans, which is most likely to happen. We had this happen in 2011, 12, 13. We have to go out and hire people, and we have to hire them right away, and it takes some ramp up time and everything else. Or we have to use software, which will alleviate the problem dramatically. Servicer information is the first one they need. Student loan debt totals. I have no idea how much I have in student loans. So if we find the student, if they then find out how to get to identify their servicer, then they have to understand their student debt totals. In my entire career, and I've been a skip tracer, I've been a bill collector, I've collected and serviced defaulted loans and non-defaulted loans for 31 years today. Actually, it's almost July 4th is when I started my new company. July 3rd is when I started my new company. And ION Tuition became part of that in 2008. The first and only answer every time you call and says, hi, I'm calling you about your student loan. The first few lines are, what? I have a student loan? People are usually surprised. It took us 40 minutes to put somebody into loan rehabilitation or help them consolidate their student loans and complete their loan verification certificates. But now 40 minutes on the phone means that it's 3-hour wait time with the servicers. So they need to have a better communication plan. And then repayment options. There's a brand new repayment option waiting in the wings, and that's supposed to have you pay 5% and get forgiveness over 10 years. It may have to go through a CBO score. It may have to go through a legislative process, and I'm not sure that Manchin's going to let anything pass on that. He's already stopped a couple of them. Over 50% of federal loan portfolio is high risk. This was August 22 when the GAO did the report, when student loans were supposed to go back into repayment October 1st, which was extended to December 31st, then March, then it was, we're still waiting for. Hold times, servicer issues. We've got lots of these problems. The latest, this is in the people living in low-income census tracts. This happened. This is a statement from the Student Borrower Protection Center. Ben is the primary researcher on over there, and this was in the Inside Higher Ed. There's a 57% increase in median non-student loan and non-mortgage payments, while those 18 to 29 have seen a 252% increase. No one has the budget and no one has made a plan on how to repay their student loans. The Federal Reserve of Philadelphia has already said that 45% of people that were in repayment will not re-enter repayment when the pause ends. And there are reasons for that. We'll go to, not because people can't pay. There are ways to not become defaulted, but you have to get to them. According to Mark Kantrowitz, I'm sure all of you know Mark Kantrowitz. Mark was with the Center for Education Statistics at the department for a long time. And Mark's research shows only about half who are in repayment. They were in delinquency or default, and the rest had applied for temporary relief. This is before the pandemic payment pause. I'll repeat that again. That's before the pandemic payment pause. It's only going to be worse now. And we have to help those students. We projected the default and delinquency for the 3-year CDR right away. For-profits, not-for-profits, publics, there is going to be a spike in delinquency and default. No one's going to know what's going on, who to contact, who to call, what to pay, how much to pay. These are based on the roll rates between 2016 and 2019. And this is our experience with these colleges and with data that's available publicly. The CDR projections for private for-profit, private not-for-profit, and publics. This is what we expect. And that's exactly what Jim Qual said here, that in the Texas Federal Code, I forgot to add that, Jim said that, I should say Undersecretary Qual said that this will cause tremendous hardship and the delinquency and default rate will be unmanageable for the department. I'll add it when we send this copy to you after the webinar. So we're talking about 26, 25, 18% default rates. We've never seen this before since the mortgage crisis. The mortgage delinquency and default rates were actually lower during that crisis in 2008, 2009. What are the reasons your borrowers are going to call you? And this is actually a real quote. 3 hours and 12 minutes is a whole time. The last time during the payment pause when they said it's going to end and it's going to restart. Your borrowers want to know who's my servicer because you're the only resource they have. What happened to my loan? It was forgiven. I got a letter. That's a good explanation for everybody to give if the forgiveness does not get approved by SCOTUS. Is this a private student loan? What about I'm in a not-for-profit. Do I qualify for Fresh Start? What is a new idea or plan? So we spoke at a conference with on higher ed at the Columbia School of Management in New York, and that's the #1 school management school in the United States. In the United States, at least they claim that. And Georgetown Law School are already ramping up because they expect. This is kind of funny. They expect 2,500 of their graduates to call them, and they're worried that the graduates might have a problem. None of their graduates will have a problem repaying their loans, presumably. But they're worried about it. They're starting to ramp up for it. We talked about why. We talked about why people will not pay on their student loans. And you'll have a harder time, not just to find people. You can find them, send them letters, but then they're going to look at it and go, it's going to be forgiven anyway, right? Why is that? Every single media announcement today, even today, is Cordray or the education secretary and the White House spokesperson, everybody saying we're confident the Supreme Court will weigh in favor of forgiveness. We have Democrats in the Senate and we have them in the House just pitching on their stump that student loans should be forgiven. They will vote for it. Don't make payments. That's actually one of them who said, student loan strike. You shall start a strike on repaying student loans. Refuse to pay. 10 years ago, if you refused to pay, the U.S. Justice Attorney's Office went after you. Today, the very same U.S. Attorney's Office is going to be forced to defend people who refuse to pay because administration is going to do that. And policy, therefore, influences behavior. There is only one choice all of us have to help our students. You have to change behavior. You have to cut through all of that policy, political noise when repayment actually starts to get through it. How do you do it? This is how we're planning on doing it. We collect data on all your cohorts. Give us your 23, 24, 25, 26, whenever it happens, give us your cohorts. Give us your cohorts. Maybe it's in the 2021 cohorts too, because they're going to enter repayment. At some point, someone's going to say the 2020 cohort default rate is now 26%. What did these colleges do? The quality of your programs are really bad. First, you got to collect the data. You have to get their email, you have to get their phone number, you have to get their credit address, and then you have to communicate with them. This has got to be a broad frequency and cadence. You got to keep going at it. Then we improve repayment. But if we do the communication, if we get that done, then you may be able to cut through the noise, because ultimately the servicers will catch up. But it's going to take a long time. Like if you look at the delinquency chart here, you'll see our projection is that, our projection is the delinquency rate will actually go down at 360 days for these initial cohorts. That's because we assume the servicers, after about a year's worth of delinquency increase, there will be a delinquency decrease because of the safety net. Then it will start going back up. But those who become delinquent here, they become high risk of default. And once you hit 180 days of delinquency, the ability to stop them from defaulting, in our experience with 4.5 million borrowers, has been pretty dismal. And we're pretty good at this. We've been doing it for a long time. What does the communication plan process look like? Collect the cohort information, launch the plan, include all, and then move to the 24 cohort, initiate emails once every 2 weeks for the 60-day period. Now, the department said we'll send 6 emails over the same 60-day period. We're doubling it, but it's coming from the school and us. We can make sure it says University of America forward, ION tuition, I'm at / University of America, and the email will look like it's coming from you. So there's a higher likelihood the student opens, your alumni opens those emails. You have to implement a skip tracing program for whom we find incorrect emails, phone numbers, and addresses. Then provide information. 18 million students have a new servicer. How to apply for an IDR, counseling. If they need telephone-based information, we can do that, but you have to do it too. You have to do it because otherwise you're going to default and your default rate goes up. ION does have, so when we talked about software, how do you use software? And this is the only thing I would talk about. We have developed over the last 2 years a process with multiple aggregators of data to have students get into iontuition.com. Remember, Ion Tuition is not a service, it is a front-end portal. You type in iontuition.com, you'll see a site for schools, employers, users. And once in the website, you log in and you can go to, how do I plan my repayment? What is my ROI on my education? But right now we're talking about repayment. They get to Presto, and in less than 15 days, they can get approval for an IDR plan. It gives them the scenarios, what they're eligible for, but then they see all of their federal student loans in one place. So this processes volume. Presto processes volume online, and your students never have to make a phone call to the servicer and wait 3 hours. If they have to wait 3 hours for a servicer, we set it up so that our system will call the servicer, stay online. When the servicer's rep gets on the phone, we'll call your student and they'll get connected, and we'll stay on the phone to make sure the servicer doesn't put them in deferment or forbearance again, and that they get into income-driven repayment if they can't make those standard repayments or other payments that they cannot afford. So we have a large scale online IDR processing solution, and at any point in time, if you're interested, we're happy to show it to you. What are the options for schools? Hire a third-party servicer before return to repayment starts. You have to hire a return to repayment servicer. You have a third-party servicer. You have to have somebody like us. And if you're interested in giving you names of other third-party servicers, because this is informational, happy to give them to you and happy to compete on performance. Comprehensive approach, you should start now. What are the options? We have how to select the third-party servicer workbook. We have a return to repayment playbook. We can send them all to you after this. The cheapest option is to go to hire a platform. So we'll make recommendations. You can use the servicer's platform. So you can get on tell your students, get on Nelnet's platform, your problems are solved. You can say, you have Nelnet's platform, go to Ion Tuition, and your iontuition.com will help you manage your student loans yourself online. You don't have to talk to anybody. It doesn't cost the student any money, simply because you have to pay for it. It's a third-party paid service. We will not charge students, because then you have problems with the CFPB, but you have the ability to hire a third-party servicer under Higher Education Act. So once they have the portal, your students presumably will be able to do a lot of things. The second part of it is, if you see your default rate spike, then you ask us to start intervening, provide the right interventions. So it can be a few hundred hours of calls, or you can have a comprehensive solution where every student who becomes delinquent at day 31, now you wait till day 60, now they have 2 payments, which means they're going to have 2 months of forbearance before they get into repayment. The servicer has to either put them in administrative forbearance, or the student has to make those 2 months worth of payments. So now you have more capitalized interest on it. So there is a way, if you think you have a high risk population of students, then you might want to start with a more comprehensive approach first. If you have a low default likelihood of students, you start with the platform first. And then we watch it. We'll watch every student, because we update NSLDS and servicer data, practically NSLDS data every 10 days and servicer data practically every few days. I think it's real-time servicer updates for us. So nobody will become delinquent or defaulted because we'll watch them. There's Facebook-like notifications through the platform, all kinds of things. So those are the 2 options I would recommend. And I will stop talking.
Hey, Raj, we just had a question come in on what is the potential for students who work in public service to receive the partial full forgiveness? I think, yeah, you kind of skipped over that. Would you mind addressing that?
Any student who works in public service, that includes firefighters, police officers, who are not considered not-for-profit organizations, but they are included. If they qualify and they're working at least 32 hours a week, they are eligible for public service loan forgiveness over the period of time, but they have to be in active repayment. And every year, they have to have their HR department certified that they have completed that year of service. And there are other eligibility factors for them, but the most important ones are fill out the paperwork, get it approved, make sure you're in an income-driven repayment plan, and recertify every year. To 10 years, all of your balances are forgiven. And not just students, your students who work in public service. Your college is not for profit, like a public or not for profit college. Anybody that is an employee of that institution, they are eligible for forgiveness also. I took that information out, Jared, simply because I wanted to focus on return to repayment, because we have 3 days. And after that, happy Independence Day holiday. Everybody's going to go to work. This summer will be the summer of 23, not the summer of 69. Not going to be pretty.
Well, I wanted to bring up a point about the Nelnet letter that you presented, because I don't think you mentioned the fact that Nelnet had layoffs. So it seems like their policy is to not service because they're understaffed, which seems backwards, right?
Nelnet is a for-profit company, and they have probably one of the few, among the few, that have a venture capital subsidiary. So they invest in companies. Well, Nelnet's commercial branch, commercial division actually has an investment and merger acquisition portfolio. So when Nelnet cut people down, and I'll go to that slide, we talked about communication. The Department of Education, their budget request was not approved by Congress in the latest budget, and they were left at the same dollar amount. The department approved the USDS servicing platform. So when the department found that they did not have the budget request that they expected, they told the servicer, Nelnet was the first one to get the letter. Nelnet was told, we're unilaterally cutting your fees for doing servicing. The very next day, Nelnet laid off 850 employees. Very next day. At a time when, in August of 2022, servicers told GAO that they are at least 8,500 employees short if repayment starts on October 1st of 2022. And the calculations from the Student Borrower Protection Center this morning, or yesterday morning, in the default rate article that was published on Insert Higher Ed, they said that more than 1.9 million new students have entered that portfolio of those that will start repayment. So now we're looking at the servicers needing even more people at a time when the job market's really, really tight.
Yeah, and I like this slide too about how to change behavior, especially since we also work on the mental health side and how difficult it is, because all the policies have been, don't pay, just wait. So I just want to point out that one of the things that we're doing is planning for repayment. So it seems weird that the Nelnet letter would be like, you don't have to make any payments, but our communications are all planned for your repayment. So we can put them into an income-driven plan, and then you can just wait for repayment to resume. Any other thoughts on how to change behavior, especially after 3 years of not making payments?
If you're asking me the question,
Yeah.
First point you brought up about mental health. 37% of all borrowers who drop out of school in their first year dropped out because they have concerns over whether they can pay their loans back. So not only will colleges in an enrollment cliff that you're facing, all of us are facing an enrollment cliff, right? And there is a real question about the true value of education in the long run. Nobody says education is a bad idea. Higher education is a fantastic idea. That's how this country was built after the GI Bill and everything else. But once after the GI Bill, then you got the GSL, Stafford loans, direct loans, now only direct loans. All of a sudden, now you have a question. Can I pay it back? How will I pay it back? Will I have the job? Our students, especially the 18 to 28-year-olds, they don't bet against themselves. We're gonna be awesome. Everyone's gonna be a millionaire and a billionaire, start a business and everything else. But now we have that question, and you have a higher likelihood of students dropping out, going less than half time. It's going to be harder for colleges to fill the seats. So I think this is going to be a huge retention issue when return to repayment starts. And unless we communicate frequently, electronically, and very concisely at the right time, you need to know your student profile. You got to communicate. Otherwise, this policy will continue to influence that behavior. On one side, don't pay. On the other side, how will I pay if my costs keep going up? Because everything is forgiven. But if not forgiven and I can't pay, we have a major problem on retention. I think this is going to have some major unintended consequences across the board. This is going to affect everybody. Any other questions on anything? Happy to answer, happy to discuss.
Okay, then.
All right, so we are going to have another webinar, and we're going to invite everyone that's been to all of our last 5 webinars, and we're going to include our current clients also at the same time. We're going to have at least one policy person and one lawyer who will participate in our next webinar to discuss the impacts of the Supreme Court's decision. There will be an impact, and the interpretation of what it is, what the administration is going to do, because I guarantee you, everybody has written a press release and their opinion on whichever way the Supreme Court decision goes. It's already written. Their only objective is to click post first. That's every member of Congress, every senator's office, every committee, finance committee, health committee, health, education, welfare committee. They're all going to have press releases. It's just a matter of who clicks first. And the administration's got one. They got several options. Every attorney general, every state attorney general, they're all going to have it. So we're going to have a discussion about what this new policy, whatever it is the court decides, is going to do. And we welcome you to join us at that time. And that will be on July 11th.
Yeah, that should give us enough time to filter through all those press releases and come up and consolidate everything into a concise presentation. But
I know Jared's written a press release already. He went on vacation last week, and he said, Raj, I've already got 2 written based on if the Supreme Court comes out.
Yeah, we got the pro and the for, but you know what? It might be split versus the standing versus the whether or not the authority. So anything could happen, but we'll be here, and we thank you all for attending. Raj, excellent job. We will follow up with everyone with content from this presentation. So
if there are any questions you want to ask us offline, don't hesitate to send us an email, send Jared an email. My phone number is on the website, my cell phone. You're free to call me, text me. We're interested in this. We love it. We don't know much else about higher ed, and I would love to talk to you about return to repayment. There's other things we can do, but let's talk about this first. And thank you again. Thank you again. Have a great afternoon and a happy July 4th.
yes, thanks again.